application to change from being a 501c3. This is the conflict of interest policy, and that is a requirement to protect the tax exempt status of the organization. The model language is certain board of directors during the governance change, stated numerous times to multiple people the risk to the Federation of failure to do this is very small, not non-zero. And as a fiduciary, my task is to try to reduce the reducible risks as far as possible. Is this the right and complexities and other issues? People have raised the question that the delegates don't deal with certain issues the executive board deals with. All of those are true. So therefore, and since the spirit that I have heard from a number of people and in the workshop is, it's not a horrible idea, this one doesn't work well, and I totally agree with that. I really do support and move that we refer this to bylaws so that they can work up a simpler policy.
I know. No, I don't want to call the question, I want to move to bylaws.
I do see your
Okay, call the question. Will you get up here and take my place?
Hey, Tim, I'd like to ask some questions before you start calling questions, if that's okay.
I don't care, there's nobody at the mic, so.
Oh, well, who cares? I care.
Okay, Pete Tamboro, New Jersey. I have several questions. First of all, as background, I am on the board of trustees of the 501c3, the County Historical Society, and things that we have talked about quite frequently with respect to conflict of interest between trustees and receiving any possible private benefit from this. We also include family members. I wonder if that has been addressed at all in this. In other words, not only cannot the trustee benefit, nor can anyone from his family benefit. The other question I have is, how does this work? If someone is on the board and they run chess tournaments, they then have an economic relationship with USCF in some way. So, how are we dealing with that in terms of members of the board here, in terms of somebody coming on here running chess tournaments? These are questions that I have with respect to that, and I was wondering if somebody could address that.
Point of personal privilege, this doesn't address the motion that's on the floor, but I think it's an important one to answer. Could I proceed to answer that? With respect to how the existing policy plays out in the executive board?
Go ahead. Subject to correction, go ahead.
Thank you. The present policy that the executive board follows is what's printed here in this motion. So it defines financial interest as the person has a financial interest the person has directly or indirectly through business, investment, or family. And it defines then what that means. And in practical application, the way this conflict of interest policy works, which is the model IRS policy, is that one identifies what that potential conflict is, and then it is up to the rest of the governing body to decide what the proper action is for the person who has the potential conflict. What this says is you have an interest. It doesn't say you have a conflict until the rest of the group decides that you have a conflict. So for example, when I am if I am a officer of a state affiliate, we have decided that that doesn't present much of a conflict for stuff that we do on the executive board. Because several of the executive board members are officers of state affiliates. I don't happen to be one of those at present. But we've decided that just doesn't really present a conflict. A number of us are in fact tournament directors. And in the things that we agree on, if we were going to have a member of the executive board who had submitted a bid to run a tournament, we would, I'm certain, declare that person had a conflict and we would vote on it. We have had individual board members who, without necessarily declaring conflict, recused themselves from voting on certain issues because they made a statement to us that it directly affected them. So that really is what the spirit of it is. It's transparency and disclosure, and let the rest of the group decide if you ought to be a part of deciding on the issue.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
I mean, as you know, some of us up here, when it comes to organizers with a potential conflict, we've lived with the mother of all conflicts for some time. And I just got to tell you that it was usually, and I'm talking about CCA, of course, it was seldom a problem at all. And on those occasions when it was, Phil would recuse himself. And
There also is a requirement through our auditors in general accepted accounting practice to report in financial statements any material relationships with financial transactions with related parties. If you will go back and look at the audited financial statements during the years that Mr. Hoichberg served on this board, you will find in the related party footnote a detailed list of the amounts of money that had been paid from CCA to USGS for advertising and other sorts of fees, because we never paid them that direction, it all came this way. And that would still be a requirement. I do not believe there is anything listed in the related party footnote this year. You do find, in response to a previous board motion when the delegates were board, that we have continued to report to you all in this booklet the amount of expenses that have been reimbursed to individual board members. And that practice will certainly continue. That's not a direct conflict of interest, but it is in the same spirit of transparency.
And now recognizing the delegate/tournament director who almost threw me out of the tournament hall for talking last night. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President, Andrew Ray, Virginia.
You know there's a little bit of truth to that. Yeah.
And I would like to call the question of referral.
Any objections? Seeing none, the question is called. So the motion is to refer this several pages of our call here to the bylaws committee, and Harold, please take this as my withdrawal from volunteering to be on that committee. It's all right. All in favor, please raise your credentials. All opposed? Any abstentions? The motion is referred to bylaws. Okay, moving on. We're at 1734, and this is the emergency basis suspension motion. And Harold, can you speak to that for the workshop, please?
I'm sorry, Harold. You do realize we've been co-chairs of the committee, and this always presents an interesting problem.
I do. All right, this was discussed by email and then again at the bylaws workshop. When I read the motion, I came up with an amendment, which I have submitted, which is simply to add to the last sentence at the end the words, unless the executive board lifts the suspension sooner. It's in red. Because I thought there could always be a possibility that the executive director acts and the EB feels it's just not justified. And then rather than wait a longer time period, I would allow them to lift it sooner. All right, so there were 2 votes on this by the committee and by the workshop. My proposed amendment about lifting sooner, the committee favored 12-0-0-0. The workshop favored 24-0-0. On 1734 as a whole, presumably with the amendment, the committee voted in favor 10-1 to 0-1, and the workshop in favor 23-0-0. So I am moving the amendment as a friendly amendment.
There were a majority of the executive board in that workshop. I think all of us thought that amendment would actually improve it significantly, and so we would accept that.
Ernest Schlick, Virginia. I'm not a lawyer, but Steve is the reasons for the suspension are given and seeing as the length of the suspension is given, to me, it seems like including the words on an emergency basis is so many additional grounds for a long lawsuit. So I would recommend, if Harold agrees, to just remove the words on an emergency basis.
I don't think we accept that. I think we want to make clear that this is an exceptional situation.
Yeah, this is cutting against sort of a time-honored principle of the way that we execute suspensions or expulsions from the Federation. It's a big deal. And I think if you were in the workshop, you know that this discussion was surrounded by the extreme circumstances that we faced this year with a weapon being talked about in an email. Yeah, so it truly is an emergency action and not one that we take lightly, because we're essentially bypassing some of our member safeguards to allow the ED to do this. But it's for the safety of the staff, and so that we avoid the ridiculous situation of having a member threaten someone on our staff and then remaining a member in good standing a month later, for example.
So, Mr. Schlick, are you going to withdraw the amendment?
I looked at it more as a question, so I didn't move an amendment.
Okay. Well, it is twice this year, and with distressing regularity, meaning not every month, but every year, we have someone who is a member of this organization who doesn't like something that has occurred, who will literally threaten physical harm or damage to our team members. And sometimes I recognize that there are times that's in the heat of the moment. I recognize that if that individual is multiple states away, it may be less of an active threat. This does not change how the office will react to those things, which is to immediately contact law enforcement authorities. Someone has said, well, this is more this won't keep somebody from showing up at the door. Well, neither will an EPO, folks, right? It just doesn't happen. But do we want someone who has threatened to come to the office and resolve the situation with my big knife, unquote, actively being able to run a tournament in our name the next week? Something tells me the answer to that is no. Now, if we can resolve that that person may have had a medical issue or may have had some other issue, this gives us time to investigate that. Otherwise, we've got 60 days before we can take any kind of action. This is not to be taken lightly. I mean, the situations it causes are not to be taken lightly, and they are, distressingly regular, but they're not like it's every single week. So when we looked at this, dealing with one of these issues, we realized our hands were kind of tied because we couldn't take any sort of action to say this is just unacceptable while we get to the bottom of all the pieces of it. So that was the thrust behind doing it. Harold very rightly said, why do you think this is a problem? And I outlined the cases that have been involved, and he's like, oh yeah, so that's where it comes from, and that's the spirit.
I think there's somebody to the rear, Mike.
Yeah.
To the rear.
Jim Minnow, Southern California. There's nothing wrong with the spirit of this amendment, but the one thing I find a little troubling is where it says, may suspend the membership of any person and their related affiliate. Now, it seems to me that you might be punishing many people for the bad act of one person.
May I answer that question, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, you can respond.
Many of our affiliates are comprised of a whole lot of folks. We get that. Many of our affiliates aren't. Many of our affiliates are a tournament director who is the sole person involved with that affiliate and is putting on events under that affiliate name. Would we suspend the membership of the Kentucky Chess Association because tournament director Alan Priest threatened somebody at the office? I am certain that would not occur. Would we suspend the membership of ABC affiliate, which is the affiliate of tournament director A, who threatens to come in and resolve the situation with a knife? Yeah. Because we don't want the affiliate to be running a tournament while we're not sure about the stability of said tournament director, who is the sole operation of the affiliate.
But if you suspended his membership, you wouldn't be able to run the tournament.
The affiliate still could.
But they would need another director.
Absolutely. They would need another director, but the affiliate,
That director.
but the affiliate still could.
Well, it seems to me if they had two directors, then it's more than one person in the affiliate. And the other person may be completely innocent of anything.
That's why we consider it, them say it's automatic. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that you're concerned that we could suspend the affiliate, but I don't know if this gives you any assurance, perhaps not, but this comes up a couple of times a year, and the first question out of someone's mouth is, they'll say something like, this does not require action against the affiliate, because of the many persons idea that you're talking about here. It is always at the foremost of mind when there's talk of any suspensions like this, and the affiliate does not get suspended along with its main perk. Ken?
We can think of, in a large scale, we can think of the executive director as being very similar to a chief tournament director of a tournament, insofar as the chief TD has the overall ultimate responsibility for the orderly progress and conduct of the tournament. The executive director has the overall responsibility for the well-being and orderly progress of work of the staff. This motion asks the delegates to place faith in the executive director, faith and trust, actually, trust, in the executive director to exercise this power with great discretion and only as needed. I have the utmost confidence in the executive board in their hiring of an executive director to select a person capable of exercising that function appropriately.
And if I could gloss just a little bit, nothing like this would ever occur, at least not in the past few years. Now, that doesn't speak to the future, I know. This would never occur without the ED picking up the phone and contacting the president. And the president, it's on the president then to involve the rest of the board if he or she so thinks. And that happens routinely. I can tell you that the ED would never take this action by his or herself in the way that we operate today. And I can only hope it would remain that way in the future. Of course, you have to do more than hope.
I'm sure it wouldn't happen with the group we have here today, but I could see a time where an executive director might have some personal differences with the member of an affiliate and decide he would punch the whole affiliate by taking away the membership of all of them. I think it gives the executive director a little bit too much power. And as the previous speaker in this microphone mentioned, that you'd have to have more than one person at affiliate. So I just think we don't need that related affiliate part of it.
Can I jump the line and speak to that as a question about the motion?
Sure.
I would like to point out that this does not revoke any membership. It suspends membership. It requires review by the board within 72 hours. That's within 3 days. If the executive director were on a mission to punish people who had no basis to do that, I do believe that the board would consider whether that executive director were appropriately employed. Secondly, the suspension then would follow through the provisions of Article 3, Section 13. That's the normal funnel that goes through all the review process and provides all of the due process pieces. I'm going to steal Daniel's thunder for just a minute. I think it's an appropriate place to put it in if it's okay. Daniel suggested, I think, a good change to this, and I think we would accept it because it's certainly in the spirit of it. If people are concerned about the and, we'll simply change it to or. Suspend the membership of any person or their related affiliate that has engaged in any activity. If we were to suspend the affiliate, it does not affect the membership of anybody else of anyone who is associated with that affiliate. It does not affect the membership rights. So I'm perfectly happy with changing at the end of the first line up there, the and to an or.
All right, let me just pause and see if any EB member has an objection to substitution of the word or for and, if I'm understanding the amendment correctly.
Yes.
All right, seeing none, it's a friendly amendment. Front mic.
That's correct. That's the point.
David Day, Utah. I think many of us have the opportunity to work with the office staff and know how exceptional they are and how wonderful they are. I candidly can't believe that we're having a discussion about whether or not we're going to allow an emergency suspension of somebody's membership when they're threatening physical violence towards one of these people. This is a complete common sense motion that should pass immediately.
Right. I will tell you that at the time this came up, to be real honest here, the EB was so distressed by this event that we were prepared to do this without full authority or with questionable authority, because it was sort of a very scary thing, and we felt we were in a ridiculous position. It was, however, controversial among the EB. So we are having this discussion. I kind of agree with you, David, but we are having this discussion because all good minds don't agree. And so it's worth talking about. Rear mic.
Green Kentucky, Northern California. Regarding the last amendment, don't you want it to say and/or rather than or? Because or implies that you're going to do one or the other, but not both.
Okay. I don't necessarily agree with the premise, but that makes folks happy. Okay.
Well, wait. What are we saying here? I think this completely guts Danny's idea. Yeah. So.
Let's leave it alone. I don't think I'll accept that.
Fine.
I call the question.
Any objections? I object to whatever you just did there. Harold, I can tell you from the bottom of my heart that was not personal. All right, I see no objections. We're going to vote the amended motion up or down now. So, all in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes. Thanks. All right, we're moving on to ADM 1735. Mr. Hoffman, no relation to the executive director. No.
We haven't checked that closely. Okay. We made one change in the motion, the first 5 words to be struck when submitting their annual dues. So we'll start, each state chapter shall submit a copy of their bylaws or articles of association as specified in SE 8 number 4. This may be in written or electronic form. This came up because if you read the rationale, it was discovered that that USDF does not have any records of anybody's bylaws or articles of association, which struck me as odd, because in order to be credentialed as a state affiliate, they should be producing something like that. It would be nice if the state chapters actually did produce something like that. So this would just be put under the DASI's. It's a relatively simple motion. Not to submit it though.
Oh, thank you.
Just to have one, I got it.
Just so you as to have, what I've asked my relative, if there is a way of doing it, and she says yes.
Okay, if you guys are done with your sidebar conversation there, to the rear mic.
Thank you, Dwayne Barber, Southern California. I'd like to request a friendly motion, friendly amendment be added to this. And that is a copy of their bylaws or articles of association and IRS status. Right now, if I were to ask the board or any person who manages these types of things, does that state affiliate have which status with regard to the IRS? Whether it's 501c3, 47, 21, 32, whatever. I think we need to stay up to date with these organizations where they're at. In addition, I think we need to assist them and educate them, as we know, to help them maybe realign themselves with what they are doing and choosing to do in terms of their status. I use the word status because they could be a for-profit organization. And the research I did seemed to produce about 5 state affiliates who were not listed as, they seem to be for-profit organizations. And of course, there's a body of those that are not indicated one way or another. So I leave that to the maker of the motion to accept it.
I do not accept that. That's way too much, way more than I really want.
Point of information, Mr. Barber, is that amendment typed correctly? Is it or IRS status or and IRS status?
And it's a simple statement. We are a 501(c)(4). That's a simple addition that's presented every year when you have your membership of the state affiliate status of the state.
Okay, so now we have an amended motion.
No,
You didn't accept it?
Wait. We don't have a friendly amendment, right? We have a hostile amendment. And so we're going to now, I'm about to start on the hostile amendment. Yeah, great question. Is there a second? There are several seconds if there's such a thing. All right, so now discussion on we'll call it the Barber Amendment. Hostile doesn't sound nice. I don't know who came up with that.
Trying to make me hostile there,
Sir.
I have a point of information. Does this intend that the organization has to supply this information every year when they submit the dues? Or is it possible we won't lose that information and they can only submit it once?
when you submit the dues.
Well, but that's not the amendment question. Well, it is. It is a question.
But this organization is now, this 501c3, is now associated with a variety of IRS status organizations we call our state affiliates. If we do not know what their status is, it may or may not impact some of the actions and activities we take. Therefore, by knowing what the status is of that state affiliate at least once a year, that information can be identified, that information can then be used. We don't know if there's a state affiliate. I will tell you frankly, the Southern California Chess Federation has been struggling with establishing a 501c3, and because of that, we have delayed an action which I think should have taken place 2 years ago. And thus, if the Federation knows that the status is of this or that, we can always work with those state affiliates and help them out to get over the bar and jump over the hill or whatever it happens to be. Anyway, too much of my distraction.
Point of information, I don't think the delegate's question has been answered that was previously raised.
So let me clarify for a second. I was a little confused too, and there was a lot of mumbling in the room, so I think other people were wondering also. My understanding is that with the excise of those first 5 words up there, this just means that the state has to have the bylaws on file, the current bylaws on file, speaking without respect to the IRS status for a moment, correct? No annual requirement to submit these bylaws, Guy, is that right?
Correct.
As long as it's on file. Now that, Dwayne is proposing that that would change and that the IRS status would have to be submitted annually, if I understand.
That's not what the amendment said.
Dwayne, do we have your amendment correct?
I apologize, I'm confused on what you're requesting. The amendment simply states that we are adding and requesting at the same time at which they submit their bylaws and articles of association. At the same time they do that each year, they will also make a...
There's no requirement. So here's the question. If they submit their IRS status along with their bylaws and there's no change, do they need to do anything in the following year?
I'll let the board decide that.
Well, okay, then the board then is going to take the
Yes, they
amendment.
would, I revised my sentence, yes, they would identify their status every year along with the action taken regarding their bylaws.
So tell Boyd how he needs to add that language in there. How about each state chapter shall annually? Does that address it?
Annually after status.
All right, I'm going to presume that the amendment as written is acceptable and that we are going to continue the discussion as written, which my interpretation would be there is not an annual requirement, only to have an updated set of bylaws and IRS status in the office. All right, to the rear mic, David.
Okay, I object to the amendment. I think it's an interesting question, but I think what the States Committee is trying to do, and I was in that committee, is just do some record keeping and collect bylaws, because you had a question come up about bylaws in one of the states and didn't have a copy. As you're getting into IRS status, for me as a state affiliate, we don't file a return, we don't collect enough money to file a return. We're just been advised by our CPA that it's just not worth it, so we take a risk with the IRS, I suppose. We may have to come up with $20 to pay our income if it gets down to that. So I just don't think this is an interesting question. Maybe it's an interesting question for our state to discuss, but I don't think it's appropriate, Dwayne, if we respect this particular ADM. Thank you.
Thanks. Front mic.
Andrew Ray, Virginia, I have a question for Mr. Barber. That is, the original amendment is asking for a one-time action, and your proposal, or excuse me, the original motion asked for a one-time action from the affiliates. Your amendment asked for an ongoing annual. Is
IRS status.
Yeah. You can take it as it reads up there right now.
Understood, I withdraw.
Okay, thanks. Bob.
Bob Messenger, representing Massachusetts. In the state's workshop, I kind of got volunteered to produce a document of best practices by state affiliates. And in order to produce this document, I'm going to have a questionnaire to be sent to all the state affiliates asking for information that would include such things as their IRS status, but it would include things like how they run their championships, how do they elect their delegates, all that type of thing. So I was planning to include a question about IRS filing status, if any. So I don't think the amendment's needed, because that's something that, in general, the States Committee can try to keep track of information about all the various state affiliates. So I would think that we should vote down the amendment, but vote in favor of the main motion.
Front?
Well, let's call the question on the amendment.
Any objections to calling the question? I see none. The question is called. We're now voting up or down on the Barber amendment that you see in red down below there. All right. All in favor, raise your credentials. Thank you. All opposed? Abstentions? The motion fails. We're back now to the Hoffman motion, and that is amended also, as you see up there, with the first 5 words struck out. Front mic.
It's John McCrary, South Carolina. When way back around 2000, I ran the first state one member, one vote election for delegates. And I had to contact a lot of small states who would not reply. And I found that some of the state associations essentially didn't exist. Some of them selected their officers in some unknown secret way. They just got together and sent in the name. And so I think that, and later one of those states asked me to look at a proposed new constitution, which would require that only members of big city clubs in that state would be allowed to join the state association. I realize that requiring people to turn in their bylaws isn't going to correct any of that, but at least it's a step toward encouraging states to be a little more responsible in the way they maintain their organization. In South Carolina, we have a constitution, which we kept flexible. We don't call it bylaws. I assume that's acceptable. And that's on our website. And we have annual meetings with formal elections with everybody, including the delegates. I'd like for all of our states to move toward that, because I think a few of them are not doing that.
Ernie?
Ernest Schlick, Virginia. Although I am in favor of what is trying to be accomplished, I have 2 objections. Number 1, this can be accomplished by either the committee or an individual contacting the executive director requesting the information get added, so it doesn't need that. And on technical point of view, which also applies to other motions that have been made this and other annual meetings, it is actually changing the language of number 8 in the delegate interest, and we also do the same with amendments, where the body is voting on an issue where they don't know what the final reading of what's being changed is going to look at, and I think that is something the organization should consider changing. Thank you.
Front mic.
This may be a case of extreme nitpicking, and I will readily admit that. By striking the language when submitting their annual dues, we've basically made this now a one-time requirement. So submit your bylaws or articles of association once. There's no mention in here. It may be tacit, it may be implicit, it may be common sense that when the bylaws or articles of association are updated or amended, that amended copy needs to be filed.
Maureen?
Maureen, South Carolina. I appreciate the spirit of this amendment. However, I have to object only because my question would be is how many of the state associations actually have articles of incorporations and bylaws established? That would be a question, because it would be a moot point if they don't have anything at all.
If this motion passes, we'll let you know. Bob?
Bob Messenger, representing Massachusetts. Actually, I'd like to offer an amendment. It says each state chapter shall submit a copy of their bylaws. I'd like to say each state chapter shall submit an up-to-date copy of their bylaws. And current, okay, current. And actually, there really should be wording at the end, and shall submit updates when the bylaws, when the documents change. And I also wanted to address another point that was made about not having the full language of the DACI. What I understood from Guy Hoffman is that Guy would actually incorporate this into the DACI, and that the wording of the DACI, it isn't a formal document in terms of it's a summary of the actions taken. The Guy would put it into a new version of that. Is that right, Guy?
That would be
Okay.
Before Bob leaves.
Oh, you want the wording?
Yeah, we do. We do.
Oh, all right. Each state chapter shall submit a current copy of their bylaws. A copy of the current bylaws. All right.
Current in front of bylaws.
Okay, current in front of bylaws. Right. And any amendments.
Guy, I see you're up there, so why don't you let us know if this is friendly or no?
I can accept that.
Okay. So now we have a friendly amendment, and we will replace the Hoffman motion with the Messenger amendment. All right. Guy.
To answer Maureen's objection, this is the main reason I have this motion, is because you said contact the executive director for this information. The executive director doesn't have this information at all. And that's why I want to start collecting this information. And because a state chapter has to present credentials, which should include bylaws or articles of association, we may currently have many state affiliates who don't have any credentials.
Steve.
Yeah, I'd like to suggest an amendment that the office shall request each state chapter submit a copy. The reason I'm saying that is because I don't think we should put it in as a law that they must do it. Some states have either no affiliates or ones that don't respond easily. I know John Haskell has to go through a lot just to get the Baker, Barber, and GTOC rep from some state affiliates. They don't respond. Some states we never hear from at all. Some states haven't been doing any operation in years. You're then in a dilemma. What do you do if they're not compliant with that? I don't think it should be mandatory. I know in Pennsylvania, we have most of our work is done with one very overworked person, and I'd hate to throw anything more on him in case he would suddenly retire, which we would be in real bad shape. So I would say just request it, but if you're going to insist on it, then you have this problem with all these states that aren't going to respond. What do you do about that? You're going to kick them out of the organization, then have no representation in that state, and hope someone else will come along? Just make it a voluntary thing that you're asking them to do it, you want them to do it, but if they actually don't respond to you, you're not in a dilemma then.
Guy, I'm going to take a wild swing here and say that this is not a friendly amendment.
Correct.
Okay, so we now have the Shutt amendment, and we will begin discussion of essentially changing this from an obligatory to a permissive requirement. Please come to the mic, Guy.
Point of order, this amendment this proposed amendment is not.
Yeah, that's a good point. Do we have a second on the amendment?
Second.
Yeah, we do have, I heard a second. All right, Guy.
I didn't specify in this that there are any punishments, we're going to do anything about it. It just says you should do it, or you shall do it. And as I said, it's supposed to be a requirement to fulfill DASI 8 number 4, that you have articles of incorporation or bylaws. Since that is a requirement, I don't see any problem of asking for this information.
Don't go far, Guy. Are you? Okay. Sorry. All right. So, Steve, please make sure that we get the correct wording up here under the Shut Amendment.
I think if we just change the word shall to should, it takes care of it.
Okay, we're now discussing the Shut Amendment, which goes from shall to should. Where are we? Front mic. David, you know the Marine spoke from the back mic. I'm trusting you have permission to speak from this one.
So we're speaking to the amendment now.
Okay,
So
I see. There's no
I
conflict.
would point out that I am at the front line for Marine and I am in states, and I think you were women's, right? But anyway, we'll talk about that later.
We don't need to air our laundry here.
And I think I'll sit down.
So my instincts were good on this one. Ken.
Insofar as DACI 8, which is found on page 36 of the call, on the lower left column, item 4, requires that state chapters have bylaws or articles of association, I think it is reasonable for us to require rather than suggest that these be submitted in fulfillment of the requirements of the DACI.
Alex, are you speaking for or against?
Kind of neither. Mr. Chairman, in light of the flurry of amendments, it's clear that this body does not know exactly what it wants. I move to refer to the EB.
With or without power? Well, they already have power.
Harold.
If it's going to be the DACI, the EB cannot do anything to effectuate it, they can only recommend. So I would be against such a proposal.
Call the question on the amendment.
All right, so we have a motion to refer. We have a second. The discussion now is on the motion to refer. Ken, sorry, I'm probably the only one who heard it. I mean, Tim, I have no idea what you're going to do. Go ahead.
I call the question, whatever you think we're doing right now.
All right, with that, we're adjourned. Okay, so Tim has called the question on the referral to the EB, if I recall correctly. Harold, of course, has said no can do. So we're now voting on the referral to the EB of this this entire thing, is my technical language for it. This is a motion to refer now. The question has been called, so what are you going to say post calling the question?
I do realize that. I think it's possible that the president may have misstated Mr. Winston's objection. I believe Mr. Winston was only saying that we cannot refer with the power to act to the EB.
Thank you for the clarification. All right, we're voting on the motion to refer. All in favor? Yeah, let's keep them up, please. Against? Abstentions? Okay, referral fails 29 to 35. We are now back to the messenger amendment, I believe.
No, shut.
The Shut amendment, thank you. All right, and the Shut amendment was the permissive versus obligatory amendment. Alan?
Call the question on the Shedd amendment.
Okay, any objections? Seeing none, we're going to vote up or down on the Shedd amendment, which would make this permissive rather than obligatory. All in favor, raise their credentials. All opposed? The technical term from the secretary was overwhelming. Any abstentions? Okay, now we're back to the messenger amendment, correct?
No, that was exceptional.
Say it again.
That's the main motion. It's now part of the main motion.
That's the main motion, that's the messenger.
That is the messenger amendment though, isn't it? The main motion, yeah, is now the messenger amendment. I'm just trying to keep it straight in my pea brain. All right, Ken.
Excuse me.
Out of order.
I am definitely on board. Mr. President, it is clear, at least to me, that based on the discussion on the floor and the number of amendments, that this should go back to the States Committee for consideration and report back next year. Therefore, I move to refer to States.
Now we have a motion to refer to States, and we'll get discussion on that motion. Thank you.
I have a question regarding the status. The requirement is already in the current regulations. So the question is that if a state fails to produce such documentation, is their affiliation revoked? Question, okay. Also, if the state responds and says we don't have them, is their affiliation revoked?
Point of order, please. The debate and referral.
It's true at the moment.
I'm just asking, I'm asking the status of the state association, if it passes or fails, I don't care.
That's not, it's not relevant to whether
It is.
All right. If nothing else, David, you have that thought percolating in our heads. Rear mic, I assume you're speaking against referral to states back there?
Yes, I'm speaking against referral to states because Article 8 of the bylaws provides under Section 2 functions that each state chapter shall guide the chess activity within the state in a manner that provides representation to all groups of chess players within its state, shall nominate delegates and alternate delegates, and shall fulfill other responsibilities as the Board of Delegates may from time to time designate. I think that we need the reporting of bylaws now and not to refer it back for more discussion, so that there's a way to find out whether designated state affiliates are doing what they're supposed to do, so that then there can be consideration of either working with those existing state affiliates to get them doing those things, or finding out whether there is another affiliate within that state or organization that would become the official state affiliate and would carry out the mission of U.S. chess within each state. We have organizations that are named as state affiliates and are, private little clubs or something, or whatever they are, but are not actually carrying forth the mission of U.S. chess within the state. We don't ever look at their bylaws and we don't do anything to follow up, then we leave lots of members out in states unable, and potential members and chess players not getting the benefit of U.S. chess within their state. So I think we should go ahead and reject the referral and vote on it now and get the process started.
Thank you. Ernie, I presume you're speaking for referral?
I am speaking for referral, and I would like permission to ask a question of either the ED or the executive director, whichever is appropriate. If this is referred, would either the board or the executive director have any problem with starting making requests of the state affiliations at this immediate time?
I'll speak for myself. No.
In that case, I am in favor of referral until next year, at which time they can submit the exact language that they want to make to DCAI Section 4. Thank you.
Thank you. Alan?
Most commonly in my years of serving as a delegate, when we have had a flurry of motions, I have supported referral. However, in this case, I do not. Many of the amendments have failed that have been submitted. I think we have something that my sense from the floor has come to be acceptable. And I think we can go ahead and decide this today. I don't know what stage we come back that would be any different. This does not, well, I'm not speaking to the motion. So I think we've got something we can vote up or down, and I think we just need to deal with this right now. So I am opposed to referral.
Thank you. Ken?
I generally would agree with Mr. Priest. However, Mr. Coons has raised some interesting questions about the consequences of not having filed bylaws or articles of association. I would favor referral simply because I don't see this as something that is critical to have to start the process today, although I do understand the point about state chapters should be doing this and we want to encourage participation. I just think that hastily written legislation on the floor leads to something of a mess. I'd rather see more careful deliberation in a smaller body with particular expertise in the matter. At the risk of political controversy, I'd say that we just saw a stellar example of what happens when legislation tries to ram through quickly in the American Health Care Act in Congress. So I
Mr. Blue. To the mean tournament director at the back mic.
In Great Virginia, and we have a committee system in place, and with this particular committee, I don't know that we're changing the chair. I don't believe that we're changing the membership of that committee. I'm not sure what would become different in what they have reported to the delegates. And as has been noted, most of these various motions have failed. So let's vote on what they have presented. Thank you.
Thank you. Fun.
I call the question of referral.
Are there any objections to calling the question of referral? Seeing none, we're going to vote up or down on referral to states. All in favor, say, raise your credentials. Okay, don't strain yourself too much here. All opposed? Any abstentions? The motion is not referred, and we are back to what I refer to as the messenger amendment. It is the main motion now.
I call the question on the main motion.
Any objections to calling the question on the main motion? Seeing none, we're voting up or down on the main motion, the messenger amendment.
Could we read it, please?
Yes, absolutely. Who can read it?
Each state chapter shall submit a copy of their current bylaws or articles of association and any amendments as specified in Delegate Action and Continuing Interest 8, item number 4. This may be in written or electronic form.
Take a deep breath. Here we go.
Ken, I just want to comment that this will affect slightly less than 22 million people.
Until such time as the executive board and the office is successful in expanding U.S. chess membership substantially.
So the best thing that came out of all of that was Ken's grammatical correction there. So let's do this. All in favor, raise your credentials. Any opposed? Any abstaining? the messenger amendment passes. Alan, ADM 1736, you want to speak to this?
First thing about ADM 1736 is there is a scrivener's error that we need to correct. This motion is to revise Ethics Code Section 7E. That is what is presented on the board. That is different than what's in your delegate's call. It is 7E. What this does, as it was presented in the ethics workshop, is that this change simply makes it clear that when a person against whom sanctions have been recommended by one of our sanctioning bodies, that when they appear before a board in an appeal, that they can only present evidence from the record rather than introducing new evidence that had not been presented to the sanctioning, to the body that recommended the sanction.
Thank you. Harold will report on the ethics workshop.
Yes, and in order to save time, I'm going to also address the next one. Both of these, there was absolutely no objection at the workshop.
Thank you. Discussion on ADM 1736. Bob?
I just wanted to point out it's 7.E, not 7.EE. Oh, it's a strike through.
It's a C with a strike through.
Never mind.
Rear mic.
Yeah, I just do have one question.
Are you speaking to the mic, or is it on?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I have one question. I understand that we don't want essentially a new trial before the EB, but if the basis of the appeal is that some new evidence is turned up, what mechanism does that person have to present it?
None.
Do we want that?
No.
Can you elaborate?
Hal, would you please come and speak to the mic? Yeah, we heard emphatically his opinion, but I think the follow-on might need to be on the mic.
All right, Hal Terry from New Hampshire. The principle is very simple, that once the case is over and a verdict has been presented to the executive board, sanctions have been recommended, the people who are appealing that to the executive board don't get to come in and present material that the committee never got to see, and in effect have a whole new case. And if they have new evidence, well, that's just too bad. Period.
I would have to respectfully disagree with that. I think in the interest of justice, that there ought to be some mechanism where maybe the EB refers it and the new evidence back to the ethics committee.
Ken?
Mr. President, you probably should be saying this better than I, but our president in the ethics workshop pointed out that in the judicial system, the appellant is allowed to introduce new law, but not new evidence. This will align the practice of our appeals, our administrative process with the judicial system.
Yeah, if I'm not commenting, it's because I'm trying not to abuse my power as the chair up here. David?
Okay, I will first state I'm not a lawyer, and I probably do need help from someone who has particular expertise in this, because I'm in general in favor of the motion. You cannot re-litigate the case in favor of the executive board. I got that. That's a principle of law. But as I understand my layman's interpretation of the law, you can appeal based on new evidence. You can appeal for a new trial, which would then get sent back to the trier of fact. That's my question, and this doesn't address that, and I don't know if it should. And now I'm way out of my area of expertise, and probably a lawyer this pains me to say, but a lawyer would be helpful.
And just yesterday, I learned that Harold is a lawyer. And lo and behold, there he is at the microphone. Sir.
All right, I can comment from a law in Illinois. All right, after a trial is decided, if the defendant is found guilty, they can make a motion for new trial, but that is before the very judge who presided over the trial in which they were found guilty. At that motion for new trial, they can try to introduce new evidence. But once the case goes on appeal, you can no longer introduce new evidence. In Illinois, we have something called a post-conviction hearing act, which means after you lose the appeal, you can file a post-conviction petition based on new evidence. And that's sometimes successful. That happens to be my own specialty, but not on the appeal.
Harold, for billing purposes, that would
Well, now that I'm a public defender, but when I was in private, even 1 minute and a half would be billed for a quarter of an hour.
So yes, as a public defender, you owe us money. Steve.
So if the subject of the complaint had been found guilty, and then someone else confesses to the crime, that is irrelevant, and the punishment goes on. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I would make the point that we, in our ethics situation, we don't deal with crimes, and we don't find people guilty. We have complainants and respondents, and we determine that there might be recommendations of sanctions in the case of behavior that violates the ethics code. So the dramatics of the language, I think, need to curb a bit.
In the case, my point remains unchanged. In the case of somebody who admits to the offense that was already found guilty to some other party, the sentence still is not appealable, even if there's an admission of having perpetrated the action by another party. That's an extreme case. I don't think that illustrates the point of what I'm making.
Yeah, look, that's a hypothetical, and I would say, and that's okay. But I would say under those circumstances, look, there's so many details that we don't know in your hypo, but just taking it on its face, I would say that, let's say that everything you just said is true, we would probably step in and remove the sanction, would be my guess. That's my guess. It's a very difficult question to answer on sparse facts. Rear mic.
Woodrow Harris, Virginia. I'm not a lawyer, so no billing will be involved. However, I am a local elected official, so there may be money involved. Under Virginia law, there's two levels of courts, district courts and circuit courts. When there is an appeal from a district court to a circuit court after a finding, the trial that's held is a trial de novo. Anything extra can be brought in, new evidence can be introduced. It's like when Bobby got out of the shower in Dallas. None of the other stuff ever happened. You start from the beginning, and it's a whole new day.
Okay, I'm going to try to put us back on course here. There are some things in this world that are considered de novo. That means like new at an appellate court. For example, if you win on a motion to dismiss in a very early proceeding, then the court will consider everything all over again, and that's going to get extremely technical. And my head is already hurting thinking about trying to go into all of that. So I understand we're trying to address the justice of this proposal up there. Shame on us for starting this analogizing to the legal system, because it gets us into a lot of hot water. Front mic.
I call the question.
Any objections to calling the question? We have objections to calling the question. All in favor of calling the question, raise your credentials. I don't think we need a count, but let's see. Any opposed? Okay, the question. Any abstaining? The question is called. All right, so now we're going to be voting up and down on ADM 1736. favor, raise your credentials. We may need a count here. You don't think so? All right, I'll trust your eyeballs. All opposed? You're right. Oh, I didn't mean to publicly say you're. And abstentions? Thank you. Motion passes. Alan, introduce the next 37.
ADM 1737 suffers from the same Scrivener's error as 36. This is to revise Ethics Code 7E. What this does is it makes it clear that the ability for any person appearing on an appeal to be represented by counsel is only at the permission and discretion of the executive board. It removes, that currently is silent, and it clarifies that this is not, in fact, a legal proceeding. It is an administrative proceeding, and that the person has no declared right to counsel. We may, in fact, allow counsel to present arguments, but again, it's trying to keep that out of a legal proceeding.
And I should add that during my time as president, the mere mention of lawyer to us by a potentially offended party now causes us to immediately engage our lawyers and turn the matter over to them. Now that may sound hasty to you, but I'm going to assure you that we have saved ourselves a lot of pain by not trying to continue discussions with folks who are threatening us with litigation. This is in that similar vein. No right to a lawyer in an administrative proceeding.
Would counsel in this case be limited to a lawyer, or would counsel also include a parent, say, of an underage child?
Yeah, routinely parents are allowed to represent their children in our proceedings. In fact, I know of no case when that didn't happen. There have been many appeals involving under the age of majority, and they've always been represented by parents, or at least their parents have been on the phone with them as they gave their testimony. Alex? Sorry, you're hovering in the background for next. Okay. Any further discussion on 1737? Guy, you're coming to the mic.
If you do allow counsel, I just want to make sure that there is no way counsel can bill the USCF.
We don't pay for other people's lawyers unless the court tells us we have to, which has not happened anytime lately. Tim?
Call the question.
Well, you do that well. Any objections to calling the question? The question is called. We're going to vote up or down on 37. All in favor, raise your credentials. All opposed? Any abstaining? 1737 passes. Alex.
Mr. Chairman, due to the overwhelming support of ADM 1716, I withdraw the motion.
All right, 1738 is withdrawn. Alex.
Mr. Chairman, on the forums, there was expressed concern that finance had not had adequate time to analyze the consequences of this motion. I move to refer to finance.
I heard a second. Discussion on this motion. Alan, are you going to the mic?
I am.
Rear mic.
I'm not in favor of referring this to finance at the present time because, in fact, in one of the 5 documents that I made available to you yesterday, there is an analysis of the impact of the finances of each of the motions that we thought had a financial impact. This is one of those, and included in that packet is a summary of how we think would have an impact plus a spreadsheet. So I think we can deal with this on the floor today. And if we decide to do that, I'll go through the details of that financial.
Right. And so right now we're still discussing referral to finance, and Alan has spoken against it. Alex. You're not at the mic now, is that true? All right, any further discussion on referring to finance? Seeing none, all in favor of referring this to finance, raise your credentials. All opposed? Any abstaining? The motion is not referred to finance. And now if someone can introduce this motion, please. Alex, are you able to do that? Do you want to do that?
I'm not sure what to say. The idea is to eliminate predetermined rating fees, predetermined rating fees for tournaments submitted online. As far as the paper tournaments, they provide way too much work for the office. We will eliminate fees for them, and paying for that by increasing memberships by a number that just happens to be the affiliate commission generally. I think this will provide more activity, it will provide more members.
So stay just a second. Is it a fair characterization to say that you want to shift the income or the costs of ratings over to dues?
Yes.
If there's a better way to express that, please do.
Yes, I want to shift the burden of the financial burden from the players who do play to the players who don't know, to the members who don't play.
And you think that it would be much easier to collect the monies that way?
It's certainly more efficient, yes.
Okay. Rear mic.
Now I will call your attention to the handout, which goes through the financial analysis of it. The spreadsheet particularly, given the number of memberships that were sold in 2016-17 fiscal year, increasing the one-year memberships by $3 and the two-year memberships by $4 would result in, based on a static analysis, meaning that every single person who bought would have bought at the higher rate, okay, results in $168,000 worth of increased revenue as opposed to almost $186,000 collected from rating fees. So it does not fully replace. There is a $17,000 shortfall. Now, it has been discussed that perhaps removing that would encourage affiliates to submit small tournaments for rating, thus increasing memberships. I think that's speculative and I cannot address that. I also cannot determine if increasing the rate would reduce the number of memberships. I can, however, show you, and have done that in the far right-hand column, that the effect of changing all of the memberships by the same rate across the board results in membership dues increases that range from 4.2% to one category that sees an increase of 17.65%, with the percentage increases being much higher in some of the younger categories, and particularly in the ones that do not get the magazines. Secondly, I would point out that increasing the one-year membership by $3 and two-year memberships by $4 starts to narrow back down the gap between 1 year and 2 year. That when we did the last dues change, we increased the gap because the gap had been too small. It was very much in our economic disinterest to have people sign up for multi-year memberships because what we were giving them in exchange was too rich. And the delegates saw that, recognized that, and increased the spread between the 1 and 2 year memberships, and in fact abolished the 3 year memberships. So for that reason, I think that this proposal should be rejected.
Yes.
Mr. Priest's comments are precisely the reason I wish to refer to finance to help work out the numbers.
We've made that motion, Alex. Yeah. Ken?
Mr. President, the U.S. Chess Federation also collects FIDE rating fees for FIDE rated events. In the interest of clarity, the motion has disappeared, but I move to amend the motion by inserting the words U.S. chess before per diem rating fee.
Alex, is that friendly?
I'll accept that. Per diem is clear enough since they just did per term.
All right, so now the main motion, which I know is the Baloo amendment, is amended friendly up there. Ken whispered to me on the side that he wanted his name on one of the amendments, so I agreed to do it. Rear mic.
Gerald Larson, Alabama. There are a couple of problems with this. Number one, the demand curve for membership is not flat. So if you raise the price, there will be fewer people who sign up. Plus, this is exacerbated by the fact that members don't see rating fees. Members only see membership fees. Finally, I think this is actually going in the wrong direction. Our real product here is ratings. So I think we should actually be raising rating fees, not lowering them.
Thank you. Sir?
Yes, Andrew Ray, Virginia, and I have a question for Mr. Rowley. And that would be, how many people have refused to play in online tournaments because of the excessive cost of the rating fee?
For playing Stump the Chump. I didn't think you would. Yeah, Mr. Ray, as a matter of fact, Mr. Ray does not know. Front mic.
Julie started from Northern California. Just a note that we do deal with a lot of scholastic players. Raising the fee to 20, the 20 instead of 19 is making a big difference. So something to consider when raising the fees. It will decrease the membership. I am very certain about that. Okay?
Thank you. Rear mic.
Ryan Velez, Kentucky. I'm not so sure I like this because, well, for a couple reasons. The first reason is, yes, I agree, if you raise the entry, or if you raise membership fees, it will prevent people from signing up, especially if they show up to your tournament or my chess club or whatever, and, you know, want to play, and I have to tell them it's a higher price than last time. Secondly, wouldn't things like the voucher program, at least in Scholastic, circumvent this, and then we would then be losing that revenue on that end, in which case we would have to increase the cost of the voucher program, which I'm against because I use that all the time, and it's, as far as I can tell, a very successful program. So I know this doesn't address that, but it is a potential ramification that I think is important to point out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, point of information, this body does not have any control over the price of the voucher membership, is that correct?
That is correct. That's a promotion. I'm sorry, that is correct. That is a promotional membership program, which is under the purview of the executive board.
Fun.
I call the question on the motion.
Any objections to calling the question? Seeing none, the question is called. We're voting up or down on the Baloo amendment. All in favor, raise your credentials. Keep them up. Thank you. All opposed? All right. Any abstaining? The motion does not pass. Alex?
Mr. Chairman, on the advice of bylaws, I have amended the motion as shown because this body does not have the ability to create this committee. We're requesting that you guys create this committee rather than attempting to do it ourselves.
Yeah, this body can create any committee it pleases, but it's just laborious, I'll agree. All All right, so the motion is amended, and let the discussion begin. Hal?
Yes, Al Terry, New Hampshire. I just want to bring a couple of items to your attention. First, in the rationale, it sort of implies that the executive board has the final word on sanctioning of affiliates. And that actually is not entirely accurate. If you look on page 14 of your delegates call in the bylaws, under section 13, revocation of membership or affiliation, you will see it describes, how the executive board may take such action. But then about halfway down, it says, any person or affiliate aggrieved by any action of the executive board may appeal to the board of delegates at said annual meeting if the action is taken at the said meeting or at the next meeting of the board of delegates. The board shall affirm, reverse, or modify the action of the executive board. So, in fact, the delegates apparently have some say about that. I don't know if that was intentionally left in when we changed the organizational structure to make the EB the board of directors, or whether it was left in by an oversight. But either way, it's there. As far as the substance of the motion itself, I can't speak for the other sanctioning committees, but the ethics committee has an internal procedure which we voted some years ago, which currently says we only accept complaints against individuals rather than affiliates or other organizations. And at last year's ethics workshop, it was strongly recommended that we reconsider that. And we got so busy this year, I just found out from our chair, we actually dealt with 17 cases. I knew it was tough, I didn't know it was that many. So we never got around to taking that vote. But we are considering changing our procedures to consider affiliate issues. So I don't know if for our committee that we need a completely new committee for this, but there you go.
David?
ADM 1722 has been referred to, been postponed until after this vote. This is, we looked at 1722 as a committee and said it isn't under our jurisdiction. We wanted to refer it to an organization committee because that's where we think it belongs, and such a committee does not yet exist. Therefore, we as the Rules Committee are heavily in favor of this motion.
Ernie?
First, I have a question of the makers of the moment. Is it the intent of this motion to create another delegate committee because the executive board has the control of what committees they wish to or wish not to create?
So, to answer this, we are specifically requesting the EB to create an EB committee.
I missed that. Okay, thank you.
Ken?
While it is true that the Ethics Committee is considering changing its procedures to handle issues of organizers and affiliates, there are issues that have come up with organizer and affiliates that do not rise to the level of ethics complaints, but which are procedural issues. Currently, we have no committee to handle these non-ethics violation issues. This is a gap in our system.
Steve? There's nobody in the back, Mike, right now that I see.
Well, I don't know what to say. I agree 100% with Ken.
What?
I agree 100% with Ken on this. He's right. This is a gap. We have a very big gap, and there are a lot of details and administrative details that aren't addressed by any committee, and they should be. And there's not just ethical issues, there's administrative issues, and this, I think, is something we really need.
of information from the dais up here. Could this fit under an existing committee of any nature? I'm thinking possibly of the States Committee and possibly expanding their scope a little bit. Just I'm thinking out of the box.
I don't see why, but I think it's more appropriate for someone from States to answer.
Ken?
Well, I'm not speaking for states, but I view this as entirely analogous to the TDCC. There are lots of things that come up that it looks like the TDCC ought to get involved, but it's really not about the TDC, it's about the tournament director, it's about the organizer. I don't think the analogy is with ethics. If a person behaves unethically as an organizer, ethics can take that. What ethics doesn't deal with is the organization as a whole. Again, we police tournament directors. We have a defined role for the organizer, which is different from the tournament director. We need an organization which looks at the organizers and is able to sanction. And by the way, I'm not sure it really is necessary to have the EB do it. I think this body is perfectly capable of appointing yet another delegate appointed committee, but it's probably better if the EB is.
Right. So for those of you in the back, Mike, I just want to alert you to the presence of Tim. And usually if you slip him a 10 spot, they'll let you slide in front of him.
It just worked for me, you know.
Now 50.
So, Alan? Yes, please respond.
I have advice from bylaws that we cannot create new delegate appointing committees for this easily.
Yeah, the delegate appointing committee, power to appoint delegate committees are enumerated in the Articles of Incorporation and are specifically stated. So for the delegates to appoint a new delegate appointing committee, I would suggest we have to change the Articles of Incorporation. That'll only take you 2 years and vote of the membership to do it. So it might be a little cumbersome. Secondly, but to speak to the issue directly with, I'm not against the motion, this is informational. We do have the situation where we have some organizers who are not members of the Chess Federation. So our ability to deal with those folks is somewhat limited. I mean, there's no sanction we can issue, particularly to someone who's not a member. However, you know, this is a little bit of an odd duck. Now, you say to do a tournament, you've got to be an affiliate in some way. Absolutely you do. But all of us, I think, who've run tournaments have been contacted by somebody who wanted to do a chess tournament who had no affiliation with the Chess Federation. And we ran it and submitted under an affiliate with which we were associated. So the organizer may in fact be somebody separate. So it's just an issue to think about. Also recognize that EB can do this whether this body votes to do it or not. I mean, we can create any committee that we feel is necessary. So that's just information.
Bob Messenger, representing Massachusetts. I wanted to respond to the suggestion that maybe the States Committee could handle this. I can't speak for Guy Hoffman, but the States Committee is really dealing with the state affiliates, and not every affiliate is the state chapter. So I don't think states would be the right place for this.
Expand their scope.
Expand the scope, that would really change the nature of the committee.
Tim, are you up?
Yeah, I call the question.
Any objections to calling the question? We have an objection. All in favor of calling the question, raise your credentials. All opposed? Any abstaining? The question is called. We're voting up or down on 1740 to create a committee to handle organizer and affiliate issues. All right, all in favor, raise your credentials. All opposed? Any abstaining? The motion passes. All right, now flip back over to what page are we going to here? We're going to
1722.
page 6, right? So flip back to 1722. And Steve or Sophia?
sense is to refer this to the committee, but does a point of, I guess, order, does this committee exist to be referred to again? So how do I do that? I would move to refer it, this motion, I would move to refer it to a committee that will hopefully be created as part of delegates.
If I could just make a suggestion for a procedural thing, you could refer it to the executive board, and as the executive board then undertook to implement the will of the delegates by creating this committee, we could simply send it to our committee.
So moved.
That's a good idea.
All right, Alan, you came in at the wire with a good idea. All right, so the motion then is to refer this to the executive board. Discussion on that motion. Seeing none, all in favor of referring this to the executive board? Any opposed? Any abstentions? 1722 is referred to the executive board.
And Mr. President, we have a saying where I grew up, even the blind pig finds an acorn every once in a while.
That's very folksy, Alan. Okay, we're at 1741. Alex.
Mr. Chairman, due to the overwhelming support for this motion in the rules workshop, I move to withdraw.
Oh, okay, so there's a little dissonance in that statement, but I get it. There's a little irony there. All right, so it's withdrawn. We are at 1742. Steve.
I think the motion speaks to itself. I'd like to amend one part of it and just insert paid before staff. So it would apply to tournament directors and paid staff in the National Scholastic, who will come in contact with minors, should be subjected. It doesn't say shall, it says should be subject to an appropriate criminal background.
The motion is amended by the maker. Discussion. Ken.
I move to refer the motion to the Scholastic Council and to the Executive Board with power to act.
Second.
We have a motion to refer to the Executive Board and Scholastic Council. We have a second. Discussion on the motion to refer. To the rear mic first. Okay, you want to speak to the main motion. Got it. Sunil.
Yes, in favor of referral in the absence of the co-chairs of the Scholastic Council. We did consider this at the meeting, but there is still the perplexing question of volunteers who are paid. I would like to move to refer to the council.
Okay, so he's speaking in favor of referral to the council. Got it.
Actually, I'm in favor of referring. Just a few notes to the council to consider. Can I make a few notes?
Please, go ahead.
Okay. We do background check all of our TDs who are running scholastic tournaments in Bay Area chess. It poses a lot of questions that will come up hopefully, so would like to make those. So nationals run in one state, the volunteers and the paid staff come from another state. FBI background check is a given, but which state will the applicants check in? The applicants or the staff or the TDs or whoever will have to upfront pay. Will USCF refund them or not? Who's the state coordinator or USCF will have to designate someone who can oversee these background checks, right? And check the background checks. Also, it varies state to state how long it takes. So this requires actually proaction, a lot of time between the applicant submitting the background check, doing the live scan, versus you getting the background check report. So it has to be really planned out in advance. What if you have a floor that needs additional help? So the council will have to consider how you handle those last-minute jump-in volunteers, or I don't think paid staff or not paid staff doesn't really matter here, but that's the council to consider. But all these things will come up as from experience. Thank you.
One second. Alan?
To speak to this issue, there is a financial analysis of the impact of this that's on your sheet. It's the last item on the front page of it in 1742. Our current background checks cost 40, just slightly under $40 for the ones that we do, which we do for our staff, for our team members that work for the organization. So you can just see what would be there. That's not an argument for or against the referral, it's just simply information.
Ernie?
Noting that somebody stole Tim Just Mike back by his chair, I move to call the question.
Any objections to calling the question? The question is called. We're voting up or down on 1742.
No.
That's what I said. All in favor to refer? Any opposed? Any abstaining? The motion is referred. 1743, drum roll. Steve?
I move to refer this to the Scholastic Council with power to implement.
All right, we have a second. Discussion.
No discussion?
Seeing none. Oh, you're making your way. Okay.
My question for Steve. Why is it used purely next to scholastics? Why can't all TDs be said? Why can't we get the TDs?
It's out of order. It's out of order. We're discussing different motions. Point of information.
Point of information.
What did you say?
We didn't hear you. Why only have national scholastics? Why not we do a back? We feel it's so important that, when the TDs are coming contact minors.
Wait, I'm confused. Are you talking about 1742?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
It's all in the
Finite. Yeah. And then, no problem.
Sorry.
All right, 1743. Seeing no discussion, we're voting on the amended motion.
No, referral.
No,
As you said,
he's losing
it. His last few minutes, he's losing.
I've already left. We're on the referral? Sure.
You can check out, but you can't leave.
I have a point of information. Question, Steve, is would you see implementation of this being just like we do in K1, where you have controllers who are controlling the entrance and exodus of those children to and from the playing area? Or they just have the bands on their wrist?
Can you speak to the mic, please?
I don't know if it's appropriate to go into exact details of how it's implemented for every tournament. I just think that the concept of having a way of matching kids to parents is a good idea, and a way of tracing kids who need to be traced. But I think all this is not really germane to the motion to refer. I mean, that's what's on the floor now. So if the Scholastic Council feels that this is a bad idea, then they can say we choose not to accept this proposal. Or we choose to perfect this proposal.
The sign of a good AD is sometimes she whispers in people's ears. It would appear that this motion should not just go to the Scholastic Council necessarily, but certainly, and I don't know how we put this in there, but it certainly needs to be addressed to the national event staff in the office, since it addresses national scholastic events and involves some undefined administration issues. So, can we amend the motion to refer to include the office?
Second.
Yeah.
All right, we have an amendment to include the office and the referral discussion.
Well, I think it's maybe accepted.
Was that accepted as a friendly amendment? It's
A
been
friendly
accepted.
amendment, all right, thank you.
We accept it as a friendly amendment.
Good, all right. And I would presume, is there any discussion on the amended motion? Seeing none, we're now going to vote on the referral. All in favor of referral, raise your credentials. Any opposed? Any abstaining? The motion is referred. All right, now, I believe that we have addition, that concludes the agenda business, but do we have additional motions that have been submitted? All right, can you tell me how many? 5 or 6. Okay.
One of which was already taken up after the executive session. There are 6 new delegate motions, one of which I just got handed and is not the first 5 are.
All right, so we're going to begin with NDM 1701. Andrew, you speak to that?
Yes, and I'd like to think that the motion proposed to recognize, starting with year in 2017, the special needs disabled players of the year be recognized, and criteria to be determined by, and I know that the committee name has changed, the special needs committee, that can be amended to the appropriate committee. I believe that special needs and circumstances are similar, in coordination with the executive board and executive director. And having noted in the previous discussion how we have a committee system, and we like to make that work, I was not able to attend that particular committee workshop. However, I'm perfectly willing to have this referred to that committee and to the executive board with power to implement.
So the maker of the motion is basically putting proposal to refer that to the Special Needs and Circumstances Committee and the Executive Board.
Yes.
Do we not also have an awards committee?
Yes.
Should that also be referred to the awards committee? It's just a question from the chair.
Yes, no objection.
Actually, it may not be necessary because there are certain awards that different committees do handle independent of the awards committee.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the clarification for the chair. Is there a second to this motion to refer?
Second.
Is there any discussion of the motion to refer? Seeing none, all in favor of referral to the committees that's listed on the board, raise credentials. All opposed? It's an army to nothing. Referral, referred. Delegate motion 1702, Garrett Scott of Illinois. You have the floor, sir.
This was brought to the Scholastic Workshop and discussed. It was received favorably. It is, well, it stands for itself, but I would like to comment on it after this accepted.
Well, it's accepted in the motion by the action of having submitted it, so you can speak to the merits of it, sir.
There are obviously many online kinds of things going on in chess. I would hope that one might come online for high school chess players that identify itself directly as affiliated with the U.S. Chess Federation. The U.S. Chess Federation has, as my understanding, a couple of working relationships with a couple of online providers. Is that accurate? Not contracted, but working relationships, like Chess.com?
That's a question directed to the staff.
Yes. You have a working relationship with them.
And in case you didn't see it, the executive director nodded yes.
I think it is important that this formative group who is about to leave scholastics and go into a wider world have a readily identifiable connection between playing chess and the U.S. Chess Federation. I think that we are sort of losing our quarter on the market that we had when I was younger, and we need to make sure that we continue to be active and expose players to the USCF one way or another, so that when they get out there as adults, they will think of USCF when they think of playing chess again or continuing.
Mr. Messenger.
Bob Messenger, representing Massachusetts. I wanted to suggest an amendment. Instead of the board direct the staff, it would be the delegates request that the executive board direct the staff. In other words, we can't order the board to do something. We can ask them to do something.
I find that a very friendly suggestion.
The amendment is accepted as a friendly amendment. And we'll pause while we get the amended language on the board. Is that correct? Motion made, the amendment, is that correct language? All right. I see, do you want to, well, I'll recognize David Hayter at the back mic.
I would like to offer an amendment directing the staff to create an online league could be problematic. Directing them to study for possible implementation would be much more palatable to me, at least, because if you direct them and then they find out that technologically or contractually or feasibility study it's going to cost too much, you've directed them. They have to do it. Directing them to look into it for possible implementation, I think, would be a much better way to do it. I don't know if that's friendly or not, but I would offer the amendment to the executive board recommends the office study with power to implement an online chess league. That's what I thought we discussed in the Scholastic Workshop.
So Mr. Hayter has submitted an amendment to remove direct, to create, to call it to direct study, and include the power to implement this proposal in the motion?
Yes.
He is correct. That's the way I represented it in the workshop, and when I came to write it down.
I'm not sure how we get the wording right. David, can you help us here, please?
Let's see, the executive board direct the staff to study the creation of an online chess league, an online league for high school chess teams with the power to implement will be fine. I think that gives plenty of wiggle room in case it finds that this is not feasible or that it's cost prohibitive. That's all. That's my only concern.
Mr. Scott, now with the revised language on the board, is that still an acceptable friendly amendment?
Yes.
All right, it's been accepted as a friendly amendment as worded on the board. Mr. Hoffpower from Mike.
Mr. President, I move that this motion, that this issue be referred to the Scholastics Council for further study.
We now have a motion on the floor to refer this to the Scholastic Council. Is there a second to that motion? Hearing a second, is there a discussion to the motion to refer?
This came to the Scholastic workshop, and a number of members of the Scholastic Council were there, and it was received favorably to go forward with it.
But the question is, have you studied the issue? Is there a cost involved? What's the plan? How's it, and then you can, that's what I'm getting at. What's the plan as opposed to just do it?
Well,
That's what you
the
get.
plan is for the executive board direct the staff to study the creation, not to implement, but to study.
Okay, we have a motion to refer to the Scholastic Council. Recognize Mr. Yang in the back line.
Hi, I'm speaking,
Are you speaking to the motion to refer?
no, sorry, I just want to put the personal question.
Go ahead, please.
If I might remind the delegates, if you guys remember years ago, there used to be a thing called US Chess Live. It was an online web server that was supposed to be created for USCF members to play online chess. You know, so if you got your membership, you could play on this US Chess Live server. That company has folded, and I believe it costs the US Chess organization a lot of money as well. And that's I remember that server, it crashed. It basically went from US Chess Live, we rebranded itself as Chess Live, to basically being sold to the Internet Chess Club. So FYI, we've done this online chess server, so to speak, before. So it's nothing so that it has failed before.
The chair will take the privilege to address what appeared to be a point of information, sort of. We not only attempted a foray directly into the online world once, but we've done it more than once with such resounding success that we've dropped it both times. I don't believe that's the proposal. The proposal is, it does not direct anybody to create our own system, the way I understand it. But am I correct with that? Mr. Kepke?
Yes, the main motion as it's currently written basically just requires the staff to study the issue, not necessarily required to actually implement it. Since this particular motion came out of the Scholastic Workshop, I see no point in referring it to the Scholastic Council for study, and would suggest that we just vote on the main motion up and down.
Is there any other discussion about the motion to refer? Seeing none, all in favor of referring this back to the Scholastic Council, raise your credentials, please. All opposed to referral? That's King versus Army. Okay, so we're dealing with the motion as presented. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion as presented, please raise your credentials. All opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes overwhelmingly. Mr. President, I'll return the chair to you.
Thank you, sir. 1703, Gary?
Yes, I would ask, I would submit my own friendly amendment that the executive board study the possibilities rather than asking you to do it yes, no. I think it's something you could look at.
Okay, how are we doing? Is that the amendment there? Okay, discussion.
In the past, the U.S. Chess Federation has done this. It may have been as far back as the Pleistocene era. I think it was in the 70s, and there were opportunities for essentially what would now be called promotional membership. States would request, and the Federation would determine whether or not they would rate one tournament a year in each state, I believe, to be rated by the Federation. This was the practice in Illinois back in the time when there were tournaments run with about 200 to 400 players in the state tournament. The Federation withdrew that possibility or that practice, and Illinois State High School has continued to grow, and the last state tournament had in the neighborhood of 1,500 players. again, in the spirit of making sure high school players are aware of the Chess Federation being the prominent chess federation, to have that opportunity again.
Bob Messenger, representing Massachusetts. Once again, I'd like to offer an amendment to say that the delegates request that the executive board shall study.
All right, that's a friendly amendment. It is accepted, I see from Garrett's nods up and down. So we'll continuing discussion with the amended language that you see up there now.
Remove shall.
Is that, do we have the language correct now? Bob?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Okay. David?
I wish to speak in favor of the amendment. I think it's an opportunity to bring increased visibility to U.S. chess, and it is a potential to gain more members. Illinois is a little bit of a unique case. I think a lot of states, including mine, are in situations now where we do work to get these events rated, and we do what we have to do with memberships to make that happen, but we don't have a specific rule at the high school level that forbids us from doing that. If I could just suggest that with the voucher program, this could be done as cheaply as $9 per player. At least one thing for the board to consider, if this were to pass, would be to charge a fee fairly similar to that, to allow these kids to play without the membership. And then if they want it, they've already paid for it, they candidly could just have the membership. I don't know if that would work under Illinois' situation, but it does seem like the federation should be willing to accept the fee that they would take just for a membership fee, if nothing else, allow the tournament to be rated and go from there.
Mike?
There are a couple of states, Illinois included, whose athletic organizations prohibit the membership, an outside membership, and that is what this ADM or NDM is trying to address.
Mr. President, then I would offer that the ADM should so state that that is the intent, that it should, that the amendment here would be when non-U.S. chess members play in a state championship where state organizations prevent the player from joining or requiring the player to be a member of the U.S. Chess Federation.
So, Mike, you're trying to avoid situations where they do allow it, yet they're going to implement this rule.
Exactly. So in other words, everybody would be screaming, well, look, if in Illinois they can play without being a U.S. chess member, why can't they do that in Virginia?
All right, let's get the amended language up there now, and then we'll determine whether it's friendly or hostile. Boyd needs help with the wording.
Yes. When non-U.S. chess members play in state championships or in their state championship, in which other governing bodies in the state forbid a requirement for the player to be a member of another organization, or in this case, a member of U.S. Chess. We got to put that somewhere. That's the word, but where they go is to. Yeah, instead of U.S. Chess, just say of other organizations.
That says nothing whatsoever about it being a scholastic or high school championship. I think that's critical because of
It says high school.
state championships two places.
Okay, let's not devolve to chaos here at the end. All right, one of the requirements to get ED members, you have to edit a document in front of 100 people while they watch and critique you. All right, so now, Garrett, this is friendly. I see head nods. True. All right, so we have a friendly amendment. So this is now your main motion. All right, let's continue the discussion. Alex.
Mr. Chairman, as we are requesting as this motion only requests that the EB study the possibility, I don't see a need for any of these amendments. I think we can vote in favor of this and let the EB study it.
Okay, back to the rear mic.
Kevin Hyder, North Carolina. From our state perspective, I mean, I think this is a bad idea, and I think it's a bad idea for them to even study it. If we're here for U.S. chess, we should make the other organizations consider U.S. chess as a membership to be had if you want to have rated chess. North Carolina's Scholastic program, we have over 700 kids in our state Scholastic Championship, and most of them had to become members because they wanted to play in the state Scholastic Championship, and that should be the example to be set. So I would vote against referring it, and that's the main motion.
Thank you. Fun.
I call the question on the main motion.
Any objections to calling the question? Seeing none, the question is called. All right, we're going to vote.
This is on Mr. Hoffmeyer's amendment?
No.
It was friendly.
Yeah, this is
on the referral.
Yeah, this is.
Can we please read the motion as it is now?
All right, would somebody please read the motion out there that has a microphone?
The delegates request that the executive board study the possibility of rating a state high school championship in the official rating system of U.S. chess when non-U.S. chess members play in their state championship, in which other governing bodies in the state forbid a requirement for the player to be a member of other organizations.
Okay, and as I'm looking at this, please correct me, I'm sure you will, you're not bashful. It looks to me like the referral is embedded in the main motion here, right? So we're actually voting up or down on the motion itself. All right, so all in favor of this motion, please raise your credentials. Any opposed? Those abstaining? 1703, NDM 1703 passes. NDM 1704, Ken Ballou. Oh, thank you. 1705, Gerald Marine. Lila.
This motion is John Larson, Alabama. This motion is an attempt to increase the engagement and productivity and likelihood of returning again of new delegates.
Fun?
Yes, I rise in support of this motion here. I've been pretty passionate about this idea that the new delegates need to be gone through a process of orientation and decreases the learning curve on what delegates should be doing here at the meeting here. So I strongly support this motion.
And in fact, we could use as a matter of discipline, we could assign people to have to teach this if they don't behave. John.
Point of information, how many new delegates are here? First timers.
Okay, so you have a number. Point of information.
Point of information, when would the maker of the motion suggest we have this, at what time during the week? Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday morning early?
As Maureen and Lila and I were discussing, their idea was to do it early Wednesday.
That would require them to be here.
That's true, and that is a downside. I agree.
Harold?
One moment. Mr. Larson, what was true? I didn't hear what was true. You answered yes, that was true. I could not hear what you were responding.
That would require them to be here for the whole week.
Thank you.
Which is a drawback, but I mean, The earlier you do it, the more productive it'll be, but that would also require them to be here the longest.
Harold?
I agree.
Two things. One, I think that can be worked out. It's possible it could be as late as Wednesday. Hello? Okay. I think the time can be worked out. It could be as late as lunchtime Wednesday. And while I'm not committing to misbehave, I am volunteering to assist in the conducting that workshop.
Thank you. Danny?
I have two suggestions to this. One is more friendly, that maybe you could just do a video or some kind of instructional seminars, that way people don't have to come 3 or 4 days beforehand, and somebody could just make a YouTube or any kind of small video so that you just teach the delegates what to do. Secondly, I think that actually we should have all delegates do some sort of thing with this. I know this is going to sound somewhat hostile here, but all delegates should be required to do this, and then you can get the new delegates to do this. That way we refresh everybody's memory on what to do in a meeting like this.
Yeah, I can see I'm going to get sent for retraining already. All right, Danny, that was informational, or was there an amendment in there?
I'd like to move to refer this to the executive board, or to... Or some, do we do something here? Maybe, I'm not exactly sure, just maybe a point of information.
Okay. Ken?
Mr. President, I move to refer to the office with power to act.
We have a motion to refer to the office. Discussion on the motion. Wait, do we have a second? Okay, we have a bunch of seconds. Discussion on the motion to refer. Steve?
I move to amend the motion to refer to strike the word new.
Out of order, Mr. President.
Out of order. Don't ask me why.
Motion to refer.
Thank you.
So Sandy Ballin from upstate New York. This is not this doesn't have anything to do with any amendments or anything. Just a question about this in general. Is this a recommendation or is it a requirement for new members? Because I'm hearing it said both ways.
And the motion says request.
The motion...
I heard it being stated as required by people standing here.
Maria, you can respond to that.
I'd like to respond to that. This would be a request, and the purpose and why we did this is pretty evident. And the reason why we wanted to have them there by Wednesday is so that they could be present at these workshops. That's critical, especially for new members, first-timers. That way they get to see and taste what it really is to be a delegate and partake in everything. And to have yes, we do have to have a quorum, that's right. To have it as video, I don't think that would be quite as effective. So that's why we would prefer that. I don't know if we would want to demand that. I think that would be a good suggestion.
Right. Gotcha. Steve?
Yeah, I think we could have a video of Gary's opening report, and if the delegates were still awake at the end of it, they could be seated.
Wake up, Gary.
Point of order, Mr. President. There is a motion to refer on the floor. Debate should be on the motion to refer strictly, not to the merits of the main motion.
You consider your hands being whacked with a ruler, and the parliamentarian says, get back to the motion to refer. Anybody have discussion on the motion to refer? All right. We're going to take a vote now on the motion to refer. All in favor, raise your credentials. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion is referred. All right, so I think that we've had, is this the last boy? No, okay. So, it's okay. All right, so we have NDM 1706, David.
This is an amendment to, I'm sorry, this is a motion to amend and restate EICI 8, item number 4. This is the same item we were discussing earlier. This is an attempt to kind of clean up some of the legacy language in there and lay out what I think we're asking people to do. this would say that state affiliates should actually be properly incorporated or formed, that they should not just be a loosey-goosey, non-foreign organization that's not a nonprofit, that hasn't done anything. Candidly, that's just a very bad idea. It imposes a huge amount of liability and risk on the people that are doing that. It removes references to articles of association, which really don't exist under U.S. legal systems.
Actually, they do.
No,
Depending on the state.
no, they actually really don't. There's not a state that uses them anywhere at all. So so this is an attempt to just kind of update the language to make it more relevant to what's happening and to require that states affiliates actually be properly foreign entities.
Ken?
Mr. President, I move to refer to bylaws. I accept that. Motion to refer to states.
All right, so we have a motion to refer to states. Wait. It's just states, correct? Just states. And we do have a second. Discussion on the motion to refer. Guy?
As chair of states, I thought most of this was already covered under ABM 35. I'm not sure the USCF should tell each state exactly how they should, quote, incorporate. I'm very certain that there are many state organizations that are not incorporated in their state. I've been having a little trouble trying to get Alaska to even form an affiliate.
Let's stay on the motion to refer for the moment. Speaking for or against the motion to refer? You're speaking against the motion to refer.
Against the refer, I think the whole motion is moved.
Okay. Anyone else? All right.
I guess I can request that the chair specify whether or not the motion is moved.
No, the motion is not moved. I mean, even Guy stated in his remarks that most of this was covered by a previous action here. Most isn't all. And
Bob Messenger, representing Massachusetts. I call the question.
The question is called. Anyone object to calling the question? On referral. We are voting to refer now to states. All in favor? Any opposed? Any abstaining? The motion is referred to states. ADM 1707, Sunil.
This came up at Scholastic Committee meeting. It's a warm and fuzzy motion, and so I would urge everybody to support it. I know it's against our identity.
All right, Danny?
I'd like to move to amend this motion to National Chess Parent Day instead of National Chess Mom and Chess Dad Day, just National Chess Parent Day.
Is that friendly, Sunil?
I'll take that as a friendly.
Okay. The motion is amended. We'll call it the road amendment. Dwayne?
Thank you. I want to provide a warm and fuzzy moment, and I hope that this is unanimously accepted. We have all been to hundreds, if not thousands of cleaners, and the people who serve us, correction, the people who have always helped us are our parents, that's the mom and the dad who comes and waits patiently for that young person to complete their activity, the one they enjoy so much. And so I think by just allowing the state affiliates to say, hey, let's recognize our parents for having provided that service is very valuable to us. We did it in Southern California this last year. We asked all the moms to stand up, gave a round of applause. We thanked them very much. Dad as well. So I think it's a plus.
Alan?
If this motion anticipates that we would go to create such an item like National Chess Day, then I am totally opposed to it because it is beyond impractical and approaching the impossible. The National Chess Day was designated by Congress, and it took years of work to get that done, and Congress is not quite as disposed to doing such things as what you might think. The discussion that I had with Mr. Rockefeller after we had recognized his father, in no small part for his efforts in creating National Chess Day, that languished for years looking for a sponsor across the aisle. So, if this anticipates that, it is an entirely different motion than if it's a feel-good motion for us to declare on our own. So could we clarify that issue?
I was going to ask the same question. Are we making this recommendation to Congress, or is this an internal?
I don't know.
I don't know either. That's why I just wanted to get clarified.
I would like to move to amend this then, that the Scholastic Council recommends that U.S. Chess recognize National Chess and Parents Day among its. I'm not even sure. Yeah. The Scholastic Council recommends that U.S. Chess recognize a National Chess Parent Day.
Okay, so as amended, further discussion.
Friendly amendment.
All right, great.
If that's the case, then any objections that I would have would be withdrawn. Thank you.
Great. Front mic.
Okay, so
Step up.
what's being changed to America? What's on the screen?
Yeah, it's
Okay,
there.
So, I mean, I'm all for it. Just, 4 words, it really says everything. I mean, I started out when I was in 4th grade, and, my parents would never all throughout. I'm one of those kids, who started playing chess. My mom would just wait outside eagerly for me to finish my game. I think it has a lot of meaning and it should happen. Unanimously voted on.
Point of information, this is the New York delegate.
Robert?
Bob Messenger, representing Massachusetts. We're not the Scholastic Council, so I would like to recommend, offer an amendment to change the Scholastic Council recommends to the Delegates recommend. Because we're the delegates, we're not the Scholastic Council.
Accepted. Okay. As amended, friendly. Ernie?
I think the amended language doesn't quite match what we're trying to do. It recognizes the National Chess Parent Day, could still be recognizing the congressional forms. I think U.S. Chess should create a National Chess Parent Day, which clarifies that it's not a congressional action.
That's the person who raised
Is that an amendment, Ernie?
It's a request for friendly, yes.
All right, it's a request to you, Sunil. You can say yay or nay.
No, let's keep it as it is.
All right, back to the back microphone.
As the person who originally raised the objection, I think that the makers have made their intent very, very clear. I'm not concerned about that issue.
Andrew?
I call the question.
Are there any objections to calling the question? Yeah, I thought I clarified that. Ernie left that to Sunil as to whether or not Sunil wanted to make that amendment, and Sunil chose not to. So we're voting up or down as you see it on the screen there. All right. All in favor? Opposed? Abstaining? Boyd, do you have another one there? Harold? Go ahead.
Mr. President, the parliamentarian asks your indulgence to commit a parliamentary sin and make a brief announcement.
Of course.
There was a document distributed to the delegates titled something about differences between USCF and FIDE rules. One of the virtues of having many eyes looking over this document is that there have been corrections and improvements suggested to me. I will be making such improvements to this document. Currently, that document only exists on my own personal website. There is a copy on the US Chess website that is out of date. I will be making sure that the corrected and updated document appears on the US Chess website. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Harold?
If I may ask for a suspension of the temporary, just make a statement. I just wanted to thank Ken for producing that document.
Denied. All right, I keep saying Harold, and somebody else comes up, but, all right, so I'm afraid to say it again.
All right, I have two slight amendments to the resolution on the board. On number 5, to Alan Priest and Mike Neiman for their work at the awards luncheon, I would add the words "which finished on time." And under Frank Guadalupe, which is further down, I do want to respond to it, so all right. So this is my traditional vote of thanks to the U.S. Chess President Gary Walters for the able and relaxed way he chaired the delegates meeting. Ben Lou for his services as parliamentarian. To Gene Hoffman, Alan Priest, and the entire executive board for the very successful financial year U.S. Chess had. Gene Hoffman for her service as executive director. And Steve Shutt for emceeing the opening and closing ceremonies of the Denker Barber and National Girls Tournaments. To Alan Priest and Mike Eatman for their work at the awards luncheon, which finished on time. To Chris Murley for his service as Chief TD of the U.S. Open. To John Haskell for his service as TD of the Denker Barber and National Girls Tournament. Frank Guadalupe for his services as convention manager and for being the main speaker at the opening ceremony of the Denker Barber and National Girls Tournaments, and for finding this fine U.S. Open site. To Kathleen Collins and Deborah Robeson for their work with credentialing and with the delegates meeting. To Myron and Rachel Lieberman for maintaining the executive board motions file.
Thank you, Harold. And then my last act here is presentation to outgoing board members. I want to make a motion. I move that there be a one-time honorarium of $1 million. I can see that this is going to be shouted down by laughter. All right.
Not that we don't love you.
We don't love him that much. We don't love him a lot, it's a little.
But there is that too.
Ruled out of order. That'll be my first act.
I'll match that.
Yeah. It has been quite the journey, and I've been on the board now twice. So I journeyed along with Gary Walters, and I'm reminded of a poem. A gallant knight in sunshine and in shadow. There is no one better to have in your corner in times of duress.
are troubled times. And he has been there for this organization and truly loves chess. His steadfast leadership, his vision for the future, when there's sunshine, is unparalleled. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Jean Hoffman, our Executive Director, for a few comments.
Yeah, I just wanted to take a moment and recognize Gary from a staff perspective and thank him for something that many members of this executive board has done, but I particularly want to thank Gary for the trust and confidence that he has provided the staff in our ability to do our jobs, while at the same time providing constant support when needed, being there to serve as a mentor and provide advice, while at the same time truly serving as a leader and helping to provide this organization and our staff the direction we need to move forward. So thank you so much, Gary.
Well, I call forward ex-president Gary Walters. On behalf of the membership and in deep appreciation for your services, multiple years to U.S. Chess Serve.
The privilege is mine. Love the organization. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to move out into the seats with you guys. And one thing that I've always said is that these guys are delegates. They're delegates, that's it. And they're entrusted with your duties 363 days a year, and it is an awesome responsibility. I leave it in good hands. You can rest assured there, but we'll be watching them, eh? I wish you all the best of luck, and I truly do love this organization, and I have the utmost respect for its governance, because its governance is what has brought us back to a full state of repair, and that begins with you folks. Keep coming, keep bringing the new folks with you. And this organization is going to be just great because we watch over the greatest game on earth. Thanks a lot.
Almost over. We have a few items. Next, I would ask Hal Spreckman to join us on the board. Hal is from New Jersey and was duly elected for a 3-year term. Our secretary would like to make a few comments, and our future organizer and host to the next U.S.
Well, 2 announcements. First of all, any committee chairs, if you have roster changes, please get those to either your liaison or myself. We'll be meeting immediately after this meeting and then to go over committee responsibilities. And can I announce it?
Yes, our closed session is going to be at 1:30.
Closed session at 1:30.
Yeah.
Okay.
The Epic room, and then the open session in the Riverwalk room. I'm sorry, and then the open session will be at 6 o'clock in here.
believe it, right? 6th up here. And if that business is done, let me put on my other hat, and you know what that looks like. I want to welcome and invite everyone to the 2018 U.S. Open and governance meetings in Madison/Middleton, Wisconsin. It'll be the same hotel we were at in 2013, so if you were there for that and you're familiar with the area. Several of the restaurants in the area have turned over, so we'll have some new options for you. But it's a really nice site. If you haven't been there, it's all on one floor, playing room and ballrooms and whatnot, so it's very nice accommodations. Just a helpful hint, if you do fly into Madison, a helpful hint is you can call the hotel immediately when you're on the tarmac still, because it takes about 20 minutes to get to the airport. They will come and pick you up for no charge if you're staying at the host hotel. So please take advantage of that. By the time you get your luggage, the van will be just about there. If you happen to want to fly into Milwaukee or Chicago, there are buses that do go between O'Hare and downtown Madison, or between the Milwaukee airport and downtown Madison. However, you still need a cab then to come out to the west side of Madison, to where the hotel's at. But the cheese is being formed, and we look forward to seeing you all next year at this time. Thank you.
Any other announcements? Not hearing any other announcements? I call for a motion to adjourn. All in favor? And so ends the Delegates Annual Meeting of 2017. If you're going home early, safe travels. If you're staying for the next session,